Rightio everybody, so today, welcome to my channel, Jen's Wild About Art. Today I'm going to do a red fox for the prompt spatter for World Watercolour Month. So I'm going to start by, I got this picture off Unsplash again, that's my go-to site for photos when I haven't got references. So I'm going to draw a little red fox. So first of all I'm going to take the measurement. I'm going to draw his head, top of his head first. So the top of his head is the same length as his nose. So top of his head, and his nose is the same length. So I measure one part of the body against another part to get the measurement. So his head, or maybe a fraction shorter than his nose, with his nose. Okay, so that's all right there. Then the depth of his head. Okay, so I'm going to do his top of his head and the depth of his head are the same. So if I go like that, that'll be about the depth of his head. So that length and that length equal the depth of his head, and then it goes into a bit of a point, because they've got pointy little noses, these little guys. So I'm just getting the rough shapes in first, and then I'll adjust things as I go. So now his eye is about halfway down his head, about there I reckon, and towards his nose. So I'll pop that in there. So I'm going to adjust things, I can move things around if I'm not happy. So his head needs to be on more of an upward tilt. Like that. And his nose, I can adjust shapes. So you'll see that I'll go backwards and forwards a few times until I get the shape where I want it. And his mouth sort of comes just below his pupil. So his pupil's probably about there. Like that. It's looking like a bit like Basil Brush at the second. But that's okay. I can erase this bit here. Erase that bit. Just using my mechanical pencil to erase. I've got a kneadable eraser, which is very handy as well. Now his head, his ears come up not that far down his head. Oops, I'm going to drop that down a fraction. There we go. Back of that ear comes around there like that. Okay, he looks a bit weird at the moment, but we'll get there, I promise. Once I get his shapes right and his markings in. Actually, I think his eye needs to come up a fraction. His eye does look a little bit odd. I think I've got it a little bit low. So I'll tidy that up. Mark it so that it comes to about that part of his ear. So about there maybe. That's a bit better. It's a little bit better. Come around here. Around the top of his eye. Alright, that definitely looks better. Alright, he's got his white fur comes down around there, it's sort of greyish. And he's got it to do his nose, so for his nose is just a little triangle sort of, it is a triangle pretty much. Actually I've got to round off that a bit more even. I can see things that If I look at the big screen over there, I can see details, because sort of stepping away helps you to see where things are missing or things need to be added. So I have a big screen off to my left so I can look back and see. And it's like looking in a mirror also is a great tip. If you've got a mirror, you put it in the mirror and you look at your artwork, your drawing, and it'll show up. You'll be able to see it with a fresh set of eyes. It's like, yeah, it reverses it and it shows you any of the proportional problems. So yeah, looking at your work in a mirror will show up any proportion problems, which is really cool. I used to have a big mirror in here, but I don't know what I did with it. I moved it. It never came back. I've got a bit better find today. Alright, so yeah, so this is spatter for the prompt spatter. So for that I'm going to actually add some spatter to the background at the end. Alright, so he's a bit darker up here, so I'm just going to add anywhere that's going to be. He's got a light nose. He's got beautiful fur around his eyes. Got fur up into his ears like that. There we go. I reckon that's pretty good. I'll do his little shoulder. He's got a little bit of his shoulder there, you can see. Right, I reckon that's pretty well done as far as drawing goes. So now I can start with my watercolour. So I'm going to wet my palette, and I've got Sennelier and Schminky for the watercolours I'm using, because I love those. They're my favourite brands. So I'll give them a good old soak, and then get my water. All this stuff in the way. Go across a bit. Grab me a bit of cloth, because I always have me bit of cloth. Alrighty. And I'm going to start with the eye. Actually, I'm going to start with the nose. I haven't drawn the nose very clearly, have I? I might just adjust the nose a little bit, because I haven't really done his nostrils or the shape properly. There we go. That's a bit better. That's a little bit better. Alright, get that dust off there. Okay, wet my brush, and I'm going to go straight in with transparent sienna, my favourite colour. Absolutely gorgeous. So that's going to be the colour of his eyes. Beautiful transparent sienna. So go in with that. And take that right round there. Then I'm going to drop a little bit of a red brown mahogany into the top while it's still wet, into that part, because that's a little bit shaded like that. I might even add a little bit of orange to the bottom, touch of orange, because why not? Like that. Well, it's all still wet, and then I'll do his pupil, and I'm going to leave some white on his pupil for the reflections, just the light sort of reflecting off his eyeball. So I'll leave it like an edge of light there where I do his pupil. Just like that. And I'll go round. I can go round. I'm going to go with a chocolatey brown. I'm going to make a brown with blue and brown. So blue and burnt umber makes a lovely natural grey, a cool grey. And I'm going to take that, staying away from the right against the edge of that eye colour, and I'm just going to do that colour around the edge of his eye, just leaving a teeniest little gap so I don't touch the wet paint around his eye. like that. There we go. Okay. So also while I've got this grey on my brush, I'll do it onto the tip of his nose and the bottom, like that. And then I'm going to wet my brush and drag it onto the rest of his nose. So just for a start, that's not a lot of detail, but it'll do for now. And I'm going to take that same grey and I'm going to pop that around his lip line, because his lip is quite grey. And follow the shape of his little mouth. Come back to about there. Awesome. Alrighty. I am going to add a little bit of gouache to the top of that eye. I forgot one little bit that I was supposed to leave white. But I can add that back in there. Just touch that in with a little bit of white just behind his pupil. Like that. There we go. That's a bit better. I'll let that dry. That'll dry right back pale. And I'm going to start with his face colour. So I'm going to go in with transparent sienna. And I think he's pretty much going to be, most of him is going to be yellows and transparent sienna. So the yellow that I'm going to use first, I think I will use a little bit of yellow orange actually. I'm going to clean my palette. There we go. A little bit of yellow orange. There we go. For the first layer on his face. And I'll have that quite pale because he's quite light coloured here. Whoops, a little bit too pale maybe. So I'll take that into this part. So you work light to dark. So I start with the lightest colours and I'll work my way to the darker colours. So anywhere that's going to be this light lovely orange, I'll go over it with the reds and the red browns. But for now, I'm just going to pop it in anywhere that he's got these light colours. Like that. Down the back of his neck. The sun's hitting him and his fur's a little bit sun bleached. Go in the direction of the fur, probably a good idea. Then he's got it on this side of his ear, down the front of his ear, down the front of that ear. I can actually pop it most of the places because I'll be going over it as well. And then around his eye, like that. I can add the fur texture over the top. Right. I'm going to wet my brush, take all the excess moisture off, and drag it around like that. Righto. Now, transparent sienna. I can use this while it's still a bit wet. So it's not really soaking. The paper's not really wet. It's damp. But I can add this lighter red brown, just transparent sienna, which is actually a beautiful fox colour, into the areas that are a little bit darker. And I can also take that over where I've just put, I can drag it down and around the yellowy orangey colour that I've just put on. I've got to be careful here. I'm going to wet my brush, take the excess moisture off and just drag those edges. I don't want harsh lines. Like that. Oops. Come down onto his face, round under his eye. and then drag that around like that. Again, wet my brush, take the excess moisture off, and then just soften those edges. I'm going to take that around in the direction of the fur. I'm going to leave little sort of swaths of lighter colour underneath showing, so that it looks like fur texture coming back on his face. And as I go darker, I'll leave little bits like that, so you can it suggests fur texture. It's actually quite dark onto the tips of his ears, so you just got to take note of what way the fur's going. Grab some more transparent sienna on my palette. I was excited to draw this piece today. I was thinking about it all night, planning in my head how I was going to do it, what colours I was going to use, how I'm going to do the background, because I'm going to do a spatter pattern for the background. Oops. And then take this fur going that way. I don't need to do every fur, every piece, but I can suggest it going down, and then it goes up onto his back, sort of in those directions, like that. I'm going to leave the pointy ends on that a little bit, like that. Alright, now I can go a bit darker. I'm going to actually add, I'm going to go that burnt umber, cobalt blue. I'm going to do that in his ear, burnt umber, cobalt blue, and take that into the centre of his ear, because he is very dark in there. So that's a natural grey that I make. I make my own darks. So yeah, browns and blues together make a great dark. Except, which one was it? Raw umber makes green, a green grey. But a blue grey, you'd use burnt umber, cobalt blue. Okay, and he's got dark on the tip at the back. That does come right up around the tip there. Like that. And then I'll leave that there like that. You can't really see the dark inside this ear, so I'll just do the back where I can see it, and then around that edge. Right, oops, and I've managed to put my hand on it. So I'll wet my brush, I can lift that off, that's easy. So just clean my brush, make sure it's clean, dry it off, and just scrub that, and that should lift enough of that so it won't be noticeable. I'm going to do a spattery background anyway, so chances are you're not going to see that little bit. So I'll just give it a little scrub with some clean water. Try and lift as much of that off as I can. Like that. There we go. And grab a clean bit of cloth, and I'll just take the moisture out of that. Just touch dry it like that, and you'll barely even notice it. You can still see a little bit, but by the time I've finished, you won't notice it. Alright, so now I'm going to mix up a little bit of a blue-grey. So I'm going to go more blue now, so burnt umber, the teeniest touch of burnt umber, and more blue, because I want this to be a light blue-grey for around his nose, and very watered down, very diluted. Into his darker areas, or into his shadow areas. Take that onto his chin, down onto his neck, because his neck's in shadow. And I can add some gouache back in if I need to, if I want to put some light back, because it's a lovely watermelon, or even acrylic will do. Actually, I could probably use my acrylics. The acrylic white, just to tidy up if I've lost any white. Okay, and he's got a darker patch here. Righty. So it's just layers and layers and layers, guys. Layers and layers and layers, lots and lots of layers. Looking back at my big screen again. Right. So now I'm going to go back into the Ready Browns. Get more pigment, less water, and it'll make it a stronger colour again. And now I go over the top. I might swap brushes to a smaller brush. It would be better for the fur texture, I think. In a minute. It comes down there. And I'll soften that edge. So I wet my brush, take the moisture off, and just run around those edges and soften it. Then it goes right up beside his ear. Oops. Grab some more transparent sienna. And then come back, leaving little gaps of fur texture. Oops, actually, I am gonna swap to a smaller brush. And he's more of a darker brown, darker reddy brown under his eye. So I'll change the colour slightly around there, but I'll work on the parts that I know of this colour for the start. So come up and around the back of his ear, like that. And then, so it comes down this way. Comes down onto his nose a little bit, leaving little gaps of lighter colour coming through. And follow that in the shape of the direction of his fur. Yeah, this is a better brush. This is a size 8, and I use silver black velvets. I love them. They're beautiful brushes, and they're quite affordable. And I can get them quite readily here in Australia, which is good. I've worn one set out, as you do. You paint as much as I do. I've worn out the ends on them and lost the shape in them, but it's my own fault. It's wear and tear. But I had got years out of them. I got lots of years out of them, and use them every day. And I didn't, necessarily take the best care of them. So occasionally I've forgotten, left them in water and things that I shouldn't do. But all right, come down here. I can take some of that darker fur colour down onto his neck, at the base of his neck here. It sort of comes down and around. There's little snippets of the darker fur coming up there, but not all of it. Just I'll add the odd textury piece. Let's have a look up here, the back of his ear. I'll pop a little bit on the top of his ear. Same on that one. Bit there. All right. Now, this darker grey on his chest, I've got to make up, add a bit more blue, go a slightly darker, so a bit more blue, a bit more burnt umber, because I want it to stay that blue-grey. A bit more water maybe, just to darken it up down here, because it's the darkest under his neck, and just going stroking the directions of the furs. The direction the fur goes, like that. I've got an old toothbrush at the ready that I'm going to do my spatter technique with, which I'm a bit excited about because I haven't done that in years and years. So I'm excited to see how that works out. Bit excited, bit scared as well, because I'm like, uh-oh, what if I get it all over the... Well, I've got to cover the fox, but it might look weird. We'll see. I'm hoping it'll work. We shall see, we shall see. I hope it'll work. That's the sort of thing about art though, you can experiment and try different things. I'll add a little bit of this grey up into the red as well. And he does have a little bit of it coming down onto his nose here, like that. So I can darken that up a little bit. And then a bit up here on the front of his eye, like that. So I can start, now I'm already at starting the detail stage. I mean, it's just a loose watercolour. A simple loose watercolour. Just shows you that you can get a good effect with not too much effort. And it's just a freehand drawing of this little guy. And yeah, his little brown patch comes down there. I'll go a little bit darker around the edge of his mouth, but I'm not going to do it in a straight line. I'm going to jaggedy it up a little bit because it's furry. And you can see his fur sort of through it all. And I'll take a bit of Payne's grey, which is a lovely purpley grey, for around the bottom of his nose. I wanted to really darken that part of his nose up that's in complete shadow, give him a little bit more three-dimensionality, if that's a word. It is now, I've just made it a word. The Jenny Dictionary. And then come down and around there, like that. Righto. So now I'm going to add a bit of chocolate brown, which is actually mahogany. It's a beautiful brown. And I'm going to add that under his eye and around the edges here. Like that. Bit more mahogany. Up in here. It's beautiful. It's a really dense colour, this mahogany. It's beautiful. It's warm. It's, you know, it does look like chocolate. That's why I keep calling it chocolate brown. It's not chocolate, it's mahogany, but it's just gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And it's a schminky colour. I've got to round off his ear a bit more. His ear's not pointy, it's rounded like that. That's a bit better. And take that down. I'm actually going to also add a little bit of fur texture down there like that. So, and I've got to add a little bit of that brown down there along the edge of that ear like that. Then just to suggest fur in the ear like that. Don't have to go to a terrible amount of fuss. Right, now, so he's quite simple. He's quite simple. I'm going to go a bit darker with that blue-grey on his neck, just around here. And down the front underneath. So I'll go my blue, my brown, touch of brown. A little bit less water, a little bit more pigment. Make it a bit of stronger colour. Like that. Take that down and around. Then his darkest under here. And I've got to draw his whiskers on too. So I can take that down and around here. A bit lighter there. Okay. So now I'm going to go back around his eye with my Payne's grey, and I'm going to add a little bit of indigo just to really darken up in the centre of his eye there, not the whole way around. I don't want it to be a solid round line around his face. Just where his tear duct is there, it's got to be a little bit darker, like that. And a little bit down in this corner, like that. That just helps to, and I'll darken up the bottom of his pupil a little bit, like that. And right into the centre of his ear. Like that. Oh, there we go. Darken up the back bit there. Darken up this bit here. I'm going to take that mahogany brown. Again, might add a little bit of blue to it and see what happens. See if I can make it a, just darken it up a fraction more, just for around the front of his eye here, just to add that darker fur colour, like that. And then coming down here, darken that bit and pop his little freckly bits where his whiskers are. Like that. And then I can add his whiskers. It's got some down the bottom there as well. Alrighty, try and take a couple of whiskers, a couple of long whiskers. I don't want to do too many. Then he's got some whiskers up here as well, his eye whiskers. Like that. Got a couple little hairs coming off here. Like that. And he is just about there, guys. I'll add that darker colour down here as well, just in the very darkest spots under his neck, like that. It's all about contrast, just achieving a little bit of contrast really does help. The lights and darks, shadows and all that is what makes a painting pop out and come to life, stops it from looking so flat. I think it's just about, I've got to add a little bit more transparent sienna along his nose, so I'll grab some more of that. So just pure transparent sienna, and I'll just add a bit of water to it, because I've just got to add a little bit of fur texture coming up his nose. It's not just yellow, so I add that coming up his nose. Then I'm going to get a bit of paper or a bit of plastic or something to protect him, and I'm going to do spatter around him to create the spatter effect that is today's prompt. So that should be fun. I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's a journey. I know first of all I'm going to have to clean my palette to get a ton of pigment on there. And I'm going to go bright colours, I think. So I'm going to clean my palette, get a ton of water in there, give it a good old wipe with my cloth, my kitchen cloth that I use to clean my palettes. So I just literally brush some water into the palette and then I'll go around and scrub it with my cloth. And we're going to try and do the, whoops a daisy, and there goes my cloth, it just rolled onto the floor. Whoop, I'll pick that up in a minute. So we're going to attempt this spatter pattern, guys. So I'm just going to pick up my cloth that I just dropped on the floor, and we're going to try, I've got to wait till that's dry. And I'm going to go bright colours, I reckon. I'm going to go all the weird colours. I'm going to go violet. What other colours have I got? I'm going to go a bit of pink. I'm going to go the reds and the pinks and some vibrant and blues, turquoise. I'm going to have a bit of, we'll see how that goes. So I've got my handy dandy toothbrush here that I'm going to use to do my splattering with. So I'm going to grab a bit of each of these pigments onto my palette. I'm just going to fill up a couple of bays. So I'll go that's a gorgeous colour, the cobalt violet's gorgeous. So grab a bit of that, and then a bit of turquoise. A bit of cobalt turquoise, like that. Get a bit of that on my palette, and then yep, I reckon, what else? Do I reckon that's it? I reckon that might do. Maybe a bit of, what colour are you? That's a bit too, oh maybe a bit of that. We'll just stick with a couple of colours for around it. I think we'll just stick with a couple of colours. So now for the fun bit. What I'm going to do, I'm not quite sure how, but I'm going to cover my fox like that. And I'm going to grab my toothbrush. Where is it? That's my toothbrush, and I'm going to dip it in the pigment and go like that around the edge, trying to not get it on the fox if I can help it. Coming right in as close as I can, like that. Okay, now protect the back of my fox. And take that around there, like that. Cover this part of my fox. I'm working my way around, as you can see. So actually I'll do this. Whoop, I'll do there like that. And then grab a bit more paint. Grab it on my toothbrush. Make sure I don't get it on me. Ooh, get it all over me. It doesn't matter if it gets all over me as long as it doesn't get all over the fox. Like that. And then I'll do a little bit down this bottom part here. Doesn't matter if it gets on the edge of the fox there. Alright. Just got to try and get a little bit closer in here. Like that. And without smudging it. Like that. Okay, and I'm also going to add now the turquoise. So I'm going to get a bit of turquoise on my doodah. On my brush. Where are you, turquoise? Cobalt turquoise. Fill up a bay with that, where I have my paint. Look, grab a clean bit of cloth so I can hold that over Mr. Foxy. Clean my brush, my toothbrush, give it a wipe. Grab my turquoise. Now I'm going to go onto there with a bit of that as well, like that. I got a little bit on his nose, but it's not the end of the, actually I'll probably lift that off quickly. Like that. Just touch where I've got it onto his nose. Like that. And I'll protect the back of his neck. Pop a bit of that turquoise on there. A bit more. Oops. Oh, I need to get more turquoise. Hang on. A bit more pigment. There we go. Grab my brush. Like that. Whoops. I can lift that off him a little bit. Like that. And there we have a spatter fox. It was a fun experiment. Just going to try and get it on down there. There we go. I'm getting it all over me. It's raining in here. It's raining blue. Okay. Up a little bit down there. Righto. And maybe a little bit up in between his ears. There we go. Up there. Be very gentle so I don't go all over him. Okay. Just going to go over him with a little bit. I'll go back with a touch of the transparency, or actually no, the yellow orange. Oops. That one. bit. Oh, is that the one? Yeah, that is the one. Except just a little bit of that back onto there, onto his nose. And just pop that over there, like that. A little bit onto the back of his neck, just to brighten up there. To his lighter parts. That. Alright, he looks pretty cute. And then I'm going to grab my white pen and gently pop the highlights back onto his eye, like that. A little bit onto his nose. Anywhere I've got that blue that I don't really want it. And I reckon he is just about done, guys. So that's Spatter for my prompt for today, for World Watercolour Month, and I'm going to sign him down the bottom left here, like that, and I am going to call that done. So there we go, it's another one for World Watercolour Month. I will see you all tomorrow for the next watercolour piece and the next watercolour prompt. So have an awesome day. Thank you for hanging out and watching this piece with me. Peace, this artwork. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day, guys.